they have varying styles. I think that's the interesting thing about the two groups was that adventure consultants. I think Rob Hall was very detail oriented, very organized, very particular way. And as my character says in the movie, and I think as it's been sort of discovered, Scott Fischer sort of believed that Rob Hall was a bit of a handholder and took his clients up, holding their hand up the mountain, as he would say. And Scott Fischer's point of view and Mount Madness team's point of view was sort of more to let people climb on their own, to find their way. We liken it on this production, but I liken it to, different parents in a way, parenting techniques. The parent who says, "Don't go over there and touch that stove because you'll get burned," and then the other parent who says, "Well, go let them get burned once, and then they'll never touch the stove again." um, those are sort of differing points of view, I think, in both teams on the mountain. I think equally as effective, given the fact that Rob Hall and Scott Fischer were both pretty extraordinary climbers, but very different and hard to work together in a way because inevitably they were going to clash in style. But down the line, as conditions got more serious and Rob Hall and both Scott Fischer got worried about what was going on, they did team up, and it was a very interesting thing. I think that's what makes the movie so fascinating to me, is the two different types of techniques having to work together in order to, get to the top of the mountain. The storm did come in, and ultimately I think that was really the most dangerous thing. That was really, I think, nature kind of putting a lid on the whole thing. That was it at that point. But there were a number of human choices along the way that to me make this story so incredible. Those choices we make in life where we try and think we're being safe, we're trying to protect someone, and ultimately fate has its way. I met Scott Fischer's children in doing research for the movie, and they talked about going to Nepal themselves and going to the base of the mountain and meeting many people who knew their father that they had not met before the trip. And so often the response to them was full of love about what their father had done for this person that they're meeting, or how much he listened, or how fun he was, or how loving he was. And I think that was Scott Fischer's general attitude. Was he talked a lot about how he didn't fear death, and I think that kept him very present and kept him very positive. And I think that was the general attitude he had throughout most of his life, and particularly when he was climbing. I mean, it's said in this film, but it's also said in general that he had this phrase, which was, it's the attitude, not the altitude, and I think sort of mind over matter in that way, and I believe in that, and he's been inspiring to play and even to research, because I could use a little bit more of that in my own life. And I believe that characters and people, but particularly characters you play, can be therapeutic, and he definitely has been. We all lived in the same place for a very long time when we were up in the mountains in Italy. So we would come down and have dinner all together. We would all drink together. We would all have breakfast together. We would all play music together. We would all talk about so many different things. We all have tons of conversations that are offset, because the irony of this movie is when you're on set, most of the time you can't hear each other very well, or it's in difficult conditions, or so we spent a lot of time together. I feel very closely knit with the people on this movie, and the actors in particular. There is a fearlessness to him. There is a danger to the way in which he sort of directs that's also that I think you feel in his movies, and I think, but at the same time, he's incredibly protective of the people he's putting in front of the camera. I feel that way about him. Like, we'd be shooting in pretty intense, semi-dangerous places, and he would always, I remember specifically, I had no gloves in one point, and he took off his own gloves and he gave them to me, because I had been standing out there in the cold in the scene without any gloves, and he was rubbing my hands, keeping them warm, but he still put me out in the middle of the cold. He wanted me to be out there, and he wanted the elements to be real. So for me, that sort of sums him up in a whole. Just his ability. He wants this movie to be massive. He wants this movie to feel dangerous. He wants you to feel exhilarated in the process. Yet at the same time, there's a huge beating heart underneath it. And his interactions with the actors, because he began as an actor himself, is intimate and knowledgeable and committed in a way you don't get with a lot of huge film directors who are great visualists. But I think him and Sal, cinematographer, doing an amazing job creating, the character, in my opinion, the star of the movie, which is Mount Everest.